Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is Dr. Spaz back again with another absolute banger for you here today. Today we're taking a look at which Tier 3 upgrade is best and why. We're going to dive deep into this here in just a second, but first, if you like the video, like the video. If you like the video, subscribe, ring that bell. Join our Discord. The Discord link's in the description below. Feel free to leave a comment on what videos you guys want to see me make about BTD6 next as well. Not only that, but I'm also just looking for feedback in general, especially since I'm still new to this whole content creation thing. But anyway, I'll be going more into the Tier 4 and Tier 5 upgrades here in the near future and overall farming strategies in their own separate videos in the near future. This video is specifically more about the Tier 3 upgrades and what they're about. So stay tuned for that and let's get started with this. So when it comes to the options that we have, the top path banana plantation, which focuses on generating as many bananas as possible. So that's what we have here. That's what the banana plantation looks like. The middle path, are for banks, which those are focused more on the money that it generates you for temporary until it maxes out. So these, you place these down, they generate money and they hold them for you temporarily until they max out, and then you got to collect them, of course. The bottom path, these are the marketplaces. The bottom path, they focus on collecting the bananas. They generate the income. They focus on collecting the bananas for you, but there is no max, unlike the banks here. So with the banks, you have to collect them after they max out, or whenever you want. You can always collect them at any point in time, but the longer you let it sit, the more money it generates because of interest. So keep that in mind with the banks. But with these guys generate a set amount of income per round. And every single round it generates that income, and during those rounds, no matter, you know, or I should say during those rounds, no matter which cross path you make, they'll generate that specific amount of money. It varies depending on monkey knowledge and all that good stuff, but they'll generate that amount of money every single round, just like the banana plantation. But there is no max. There's no set amount of limit on what the top path and the bottom path makes, unlike the bank. The bank has that max, so you have to collect it. So let's take a look at the banks first, right? So a 030 bank looks like this, a 230 bank looks like this, and a 032 bank looks like this. It's hard to say that 10 times fast, right? But anyway, so this is what the banks look like, right? As I mentioned before, they generate money every round. They hold on to the money every round, and they you can collect them once they max out or prior to that. But the big thing about this, so one of the big weaknesses is that it maxes out. And what I mean by that is once when it hits a certain amount of money, it stops generating income, right? So if you have the monkey knowledge, right, it'll stop at 9,500 for each bank, which that's a lot of money. It takes, you know, 10 rounds or something like that to get to that point. But that's a lot of money, especially if you have multiple banks, which is great. But the amount of money that these banks generate, it is sufficient enough to get you going, whether you collect them at round 1, round 10, whatever, it doesn't matter. Either way, these banks, yes, they make good money for you, but they stop at a certain point if you don't collect them. So once they max out, and then they stop generating income for you overall, which that kind of sucks. That's a big thing with this. So if you compare it to the marketplace, they generate money every single round. Like each farm generates a set amount of money every single round, which is great. But with the bank, a big downside is there's a limit, there's a cap, there's a max that it hits. So if you don't collect it, you're going to be missing out on potential income that you could have otherwise been making with the other farms automatically, right? So that kind of leads into the banana plantation. The weakness for that one is specifically, yes, it generates the same amount of money every single round, which is great, but the big downside is you have to collect these bananas every single round. If you don't, you let them rot, they'll just disappear and you miss out on that money. So a 320 banana farm, which is this one right here, a 320 banana farm will generate $400 a round every single round, no matter if it's round 1, round 100, no matter the map, the difficulty, doesn't matter. Obviously, costs to create all of these farms vary depending on the difficulty and monkey knowledge and all that sort of thing. Same thing with selling, like things vary, right? But when you have a 320 farm, or a well, I'll get to the marketplaces in a second, but when you have a 320 farm, it'll generate $400 a round every single round, no matter what, right? But the downside is you have to manually pick up the bananas. It just throws them around. You have to manually pick these up. If you forget or you're too busy doing something else and you can't get to it, like say if you're doing a boss fight or something like that, and you got a bunch of Dartling gunners or something, and you have to focus on shooting at the boss, you can't use that time to pick up the bananas, so they start rotting, and that means that money that it generated just goes to waste. So you lose out on that, which kind of sucks, right? And then, not to mention, another weakness with the banana plantation here, the top path, is realistically you always want to go with a 320 cross path with the top path, and the reason being is because if you go with 302 like this one here, it generates less money than a 320. I have to look at the math on that, but it generates less money than a 320. It generates the same exact amount of money as a 300, and the path this way only benefits if you're lazy. So if you're lazy, you'll want to go 302. It makes you less money per round, but the bananas, they'll take a lot longer time to rot. When they do rot, if they do rot, they'll still give you some sort of income. Like they'll generate, what is it? They're almost their full amount. Uncollected bananas auto collect for almost their full amount, which is great. So like you'll still get money and everything like that, but ultimately at the end of the day, you always want to go 320 because if you're going 320, I should say, you're going for the top path, tier 3. You always want to go 320 because just don't be lazy. If you don't be lazy, you'll be just fine. Obviously, things happen. You can miss out on bananas because you're fighting a boss or something's just completely overwhelming. You have to do something else, so you might miss out on a few bananas here or there. But generally speaking, 99% of the time, you always want to go 320 so that you always want to make sure that you're collecting as much money as humanly possible, right? Or you could always put down a banana farmer next to it if you're really that worried about it. So even if that's the case, you want to go 320 just because that. If you go 302 and you have a banana farmer next to it, it kind of defeats the purpose of what the bottom path does down here, right? So that's why you kind of always want to go 320 if you go that way. But at least for me personally, my personal favorite and what I think is the best option for these tier 3 farms is the marketplaces, and there's several reasons why. So one big thing is what I was just talking about is you have to manually collect these or use a banana farmer to collect the bananas from these farms, right? It makes sense. It throws them around. You have to collect them. You got, it generates the money. You have to collect them. It is what it is, right? Well, marketplaces, they collect them for you. So that's super convenient, especially if you're doing something crazy like fighting a boss, or maybe you're like in a later round game and there's a lot of micromanaging with other towers and stuff like that. Like you have to do a lot. So that's where marketplaces kind of come in handy. There's also several other benefits for marketplaces, right? So marketplaces, not only do they generate money for you and they collect that money for you, they also generate lives if you have the monkey knowledge. So without the monkey knowledge, I have it set to no monkey knowledge right now, so this is kind of like what it looks like on easy difficulty with the price and all that kind of stuff, right? Like, and that's kind of what everything looks like, right? But if you have the monkey knowledge, the marketplaces will generate one life per marketplace. So if you have a bunch of marketplaces, you're generating, unless it's like chimps are impoppable, right? Excuse me. You're generating lots of lives, lots of rounds, right? Which is great, and especially if you upgrade them to central markets. If you upgrade these to central markets, and then eventually you get one of them to a Monkey Wall Street, eventually you get one of them to a Monkey Wall Street, the amount of lives that you're going to generate is going to be astronomical, into the thousands easily, especially if you go late rounds, right? So if you have a bunch of these, you need a bunch of lives. This is a really good way of doing it, right? So that's awesome. So when you go into the later rounds, if something leaks, there'll be a lot more cushion, which is why you want those rounds, or you want these extra lives. That's fantastic. Another big thing is also the marketplaces. These guys are the cheapest. So banks are the most expensive. That's another downfall of the banks. So they are the most expensive. Oh, also, let me go back to the banks for a second. So not only do they max out at a certain limit, right? So like with Monkey Knowledge, it's 9,500. When it hits 9,500, it stops making income until you collect that income. So that we already kind of touched base on that. That's a big downside for the banks, right? They'll collect the income automatically for you, which is convenient, but it maxes out at a certain point, right? Well, another big thing is the banks are the most expensive farm between these three. So whether it's a 230 or a 032 versus a banana plantation versus a banana a marketplace, the banks overall in most situations are more expensive than either one of these options. This option is the second most expensive. The marketplace is the least expensive, right? So another advantage for the marketplace is the least expensive, right? Which is great. So not only is the marketplace making more money than a bank, it also is the cheapest option compared to the other two options. And it not only that, it makes the same amount of money as a 320 farm. A 320 farm is this right here, which will generate $400 per round, which is great, no limit. But a marketplace, whether it's 203 or a 023 farm, doesn't matter. They generate $400 per round, just as what this 320 farm does, which is absolutely fantastic. Also, that brings me to another point. Whether you're going a 203 farm, or I obviously upgraded this one to a 025, but whether you're going a 203 or a 023 farm, it doesn't matter. They make the same amount of money every single round, period, and then they also cost the same exact amount to the dollar. They cost the same exact amount to purchase for these marketplaces. So whether you're going 203 or 032, or I'm sorry, 203 or 023 for these marketplaces, they make the same amount of money. I've tested it, and they cost the same amount of money. I tested that as well. So not only are these farms the cheapest, they generate lives, they generate income for you at the most, or tied with the most, I should say. They also collect the income for you every single round with no cap. So that's why these farms, in my personal opinion, are the best. Realistically, it's the let me put this down here. This farm or this farm, either one of these two, it doesn't matter. That's why, regardless if it's one or the other, these are my favorite farms, personally. We'll go into tier 4, we'll go into tier 5, so like tier 4 banana farm, like a 420 is really good. It's going to make more money than a 024 here, that sort of thing. Like the tier 4s, the tier 5s, they all have their different advantages. Those are videos in another time, as I mentioned it earlier, right? But one last big thing with the marketplaces and why I think they're the best is that a very good, like I'll touch base like briefly here, but a lot of farming strategies, some of the best farming strategies include at the very beginning of a game, in the very early rounds of a match. A very good strategy with farming is placing down a few 200 farms, getting a few of these guys down because of their relatively low cost and their relative low cost against the amount of money that they make per round, right? So these guys are very good ways to generate income just overall in the early rounds. And then obviously, as I was mentioning earlier, a 203 will make the same amount of money as a 023. So if you're going to place a bunch of these down in the early rounds anyway to generate that income, you might as well just turn them into a 023 farm to save you the hassle of collecting the money. Make sure to spend the least amount of money as possible to make sure that you're generating lives. If you have the monkey knowledge, the whole 9 yards, right? The realistic only downside for a marketplace, in my personal opinion, and obviously clarify if I'm wrong, like if you guys have different opinions about what I'm saying about these farms here, overall, definitely leave a comment down below in the comment section. I'd love to see what you guys think and what you guys think on these farms. But realistically, the only downside, well, two downsides with these farms, with these marketplaces is, one, in order to get to this point, you have to do it, and you know, you do as a 200, which is great, but eventually you have to get to a 202, and then you have to wait a while before you get to a 203, right? A 203 is significantly expensive, especially in the early rounds, especially if you don't have a lot of farming yet, right? So, yes, a 203 makes it somewhat expensive, but not, you know, it's the cheapest of compared to the other tier 3s. But the biggest thing is, so what I was saying is it's somewhat expensive in the early rounds, right? In the later rounds, it's not a big deal. But in the early rounds, it's somewhat expensive, so you have to wait a while to get this upgrade. And as you're waiting, you have to get these 2 upgrades right here, which are completely useless except for one thing, which is the farm sellback rate is increased by 10%. So ultimately, these 2 upgrades are completely useless because they auto collect. You know, there's some perks with banks, like that sort of thing, which is completely useless if you're going for a marketplace, right? These 2 upgrades are completely useless unless you're selling farms. If you're not selling farms, you basically have to spend money, which isn't a lot. Like, you can see 210 here, you can see 170 here, but multiple farms, it adds up, right? You're spending money that you're essentially throwing away. You're wasting money here. You make that money back because the marketplace generates income for you, so eventually you make that money back after a couple rounds or so. But ultimately, that's really the only downside with the marketplace. Also, the other one other downside I would say with the marketplace is if your ultimate goal is to generate the most amount of money as humanly possible, marketplaces aren't really the way you want to go long term. They're only the way that you want to go, like early medium rounds, early medium difficulty rounds, mid rounds, that sort of thing. Because long term rounds, you'll want to go top path. You'll want to go banana research facility. You'll want to go banana central. You'll want to get, you know, bottom path villages, right? You want to do all of these things to make you as most amount of money as humanly possible. Like I mentioned, I'll make a whole nother video on that separately. But realistically, at the end of the day, for early to mid rounds, marketplaces are the best. If you have a bunch of ships, eventually that are turned into merchantmen, you know, favorite trades, that sort of thing. You know, you get these guys with central markets. These marketplaces, these central markets are really good with these ships. They make a lot of income. But ultimately, at the end of the day, these marketplaces are the best tier 3, in my personal opinion, especially early and mid rounds. Once you get in the later rounds, once you get into tier 4, tier 5s, it's a different story. Those are different videos another day. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if we're talking tier 3 without any boost, because like even with Benjamin, with these with the banks, Benjamin gives a 12% boost. Even with the boost, the marketplaces still make more money, the plantations make more money than the banks, that sort of thing. But ultimately, after all things considered, marketplaces are, in my personal opinion, the best tier 3 farms, period. Especially early and mid rounds, these farms are the best. Once you get to later rounds and other things, like other tiers and stuff like that, that's when the conversation can be different. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if you're asking which tier 3 farm is best, which tier 3 farm should you be going for the early to mid rounds, go with the marketplace, go with 200 first, and go eventually 203. Alrighty, y'all, I appreciate y'all for watching. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. As always, if you guys have any feedback, if you guys have any opinions on these farms, that sort of thing, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. As always, thank you all for watching, thank you all for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Peace!